because it was always very shallow in those days, there was a mill grinding the grain on the edge of the river here. So the locals here in San Antonio in the mid-1800s knew this section of the river as the Old Mill Crossing. The building on our right-hand side, well, that's the Westin Hotel. It was built in 1999. One of the many 4.5-star hotels we have in San Antonio. The Westin Hotel here on the right, recently sold. Price tag on the building, $79 million. And on the other side of the river, high above us on the left, the building over here was in fact the tallest structure in San Antonio for about 60 years. For many years, this building on our left was also the tallest building west of the Mississippi. It's the Tower Life building. Now have a look right up the top of the building here on the left. Under the flag, on the corners of the building up above, you may be able to spot the gargoyles hanging off the building up there like rainwater spouts right up near the top of the building. Everybody see the gargoyles up there? Now once you find those guys, have a look at the outside wall of the building. Just go up a short way above these trees. You'll see a row of faces all the way along the side of the building looking down at us. Those faces on the side of the building are called grotesque faces. Now the building itself was built in 1929. It was built by two brothers, the Smith brothers, and the Smith brothers were very superstitious guys. They didn't want to see any bad luck come to their brand new building in 1929. So as they were building it, they installed the gargoyles and the grotesque faces on their building in order to keep bad luck away from their pride and joy. Well, they thought that was a pretty good plan. Sadly, it didn't work out so well for the brothers. They lost their building in the Great Depression only a couple of years later. But they left us with a great legacy. Have a look back at that building from this angle. Now, a lot of people, when they look at that building from here, they tell me, with their imagination, they can see the front or the bow of a very, very tall ship coming towards us in the shape of the building. You see the front of the ship there? Now, some people, you know, who have got an extraordinary imagination, when they look at that building, they can even hear that ship's horn as well. Wow. You guys are good. Well, this is a floodgate that we're going through here. It's one of two floodgates we'll be going through on our journey. Now, since we began our time together, we've been on the natural San Antonio River. But the river takes a turn to the left, and it heads down to the Gulf of Mexico, a couple of 100 miles in that direction. We're turning to the north. We're turning into a man-made channel. This channel, together with the floodgate behind us here, and another floodgate I'll show you up ahead shortly, are all part of the flood control system we have in San Antonio. When the floodwaters come swirling down the river from the north in front of us here, the riverwalk can be protected by closing that floodgate and the other one up ahead, and then diverting all the floodwaters down to the Gulf behind us. So the San Antonio Riverwalk, as pretty as it is, with all the cute little bridges we see, and that outdoor theatre, all designed by Robert Hudman, the father of the Riverwalk, is actually a flood control program. And it's the #1 tourist attraction in the state of Texas. Well, if you take a look over my shoulder back at this bridge, you'll see all the padlocks that are on this bridge behind us here. Now, those padlocks are on both sides of the bridge. This is called our Lovelock Bridge. When people get married in San Antonio, the custom is they find their way back to the Lovelock Bridge with their better half and the padlock. They write their names on the padlock, they attach it to the bridge, and then the custom is they throw the key in the river. And that symbolises eternal and everlasting love. A very popular activity there since about 2012. There are thousands of Lovelocks on that bridge. Now, as we go underneath this little footbridge here, have a look to the left up between the trees. And in the distance back there on the left-hand side, you'll catch a glimpse of a very historic cathedral. That is the San Fernando Cathedral. It was built in the mid-1700s. It's one of the oldest cathedrals in the United States. It's still in use to this day. As you're interested in history and you're here for a while, that is a great part of San Antonio to wander around, the early part of the city up there, and also some great restaurants and markets back in that part of San Antonio as well. That's right. So here in front of us, that is the natural San Antonio River. From here, the river winds its way northwards from this point, about another 4 miles upstream. And as you can see, lots of people like to take a stroll along the riverbank. It's pretty flat on both sides. You get some exercise, you get to see more of our historic and beautiful San Antonio Riverwalk. But over here in front of us, this is the other floodgate that I mentioned that protects the city. When the floodwaters come down the river from the north, they slide the floodgate down from up above. It seals off the river here, stopping the floodwaters going into the city to cause any damage. Well, the worst flood to hit San Antonio happened back in 1921. And in that flood, we are told that the floodwaters were 9 feet across the city streets. That being the case, there's a city street directly in front of us, St. Mary's Street, one of the oldest streets in the city. You imagine 9 feet of water over the top of that bridge. You'll get an idea of just how much water was going through here back in 1921, long before the floodgates were installed to protect the city. On our right-hand side, the very historic Esquire Tavern. Now, it opened up the day after Prohibition was lifted back in 1933. It's a great spot to sit up on the balcony there, have a meal or a drink watching life on the river go by. Next door to us here on the right-hand side and up above, the newest hotel on the Riverwalk, it's the Canopy Hotel. There are 22 stories up above us here. The Canopy Hotel has only been open a couple of months. We're very excited to have a new luxury hotel here on the San Antonio Riverwalk. Well, around the city of San Antonio, we are very fortunate that we have a number of historic old theatres that have been lovingly restored and brought back to life. Now, one of those theatres is called the Aztec Theatre. Over here on the right-hand side where I'm pointing, this is the Aztec Theatre. It was built in 1926. And it was the theatre you would come to in the 1920s if you wanted to see the latest movies from Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Rudolph Valentino. They were all showing here at the Aztec Theatre. But sadly, the Aztec fell into a little bit of disrepair over the years, so it was closed down, it was renovated, then it was opened up as a concert venue. And some of the performers that have been at the Aztec since they opened it include Journey, Styx, ZZ Top, Eddie Money, Casey and the Sunshine Band, and Olivia Newton-John, just to name some. This beautiful bridge is the Robert Hugman Bridge, named in honor of the man we call the father of the Riverwalk, the architect Robert Hugman. He designed the bridge, also Rosita's Bridge we went under before, and the Arneson River Theatre as well, plus this water feature coming up on the left-hand side. But if you saw the movie Selena with Jennifer Lopez from the late 1990s, based on the life of the great singer, Selena Quintanilla, they shot a lot of that movie here in San Antonio. There's a memorable scene in the movie with J-Lo sitting on that bridge behind us. So we also call that bridge back there Selenas Bridge. Now, the building on our left-hand side, well, it came into being in 1853 as a boys' boarding school. That school grew and grew over the years until it evolved into St. Mary's University Law School. The law school campus was moved outside the city, and the building on our left here was sold and renovated, and it became a hotel. Now it is the very historic and beautiful Omni La Mansion Hotel here by the river. Now up in front of the boat on the left-hand side of the river, here comes the restaurant Bubba Gump just in front of us here. As we come out from underneath the bridge, have a look at the building up on top of Bubba Gump, high up on the left. And it looks like the building up here is balancing on one wall above us. Well, I don't think we are in any danger. That building has been sitting there since 1930. That is the former Knickers Hospital. It holds the honour of being the first air-conditioned hospital in the United States. No longer a hospital, the building has now been sold and closed, and that will become a new luxury hotel here along the San Antonio Riverwalk in times to come. Some of the people who were born in the Knickers Hospital back in the day, the legendary entertainer Carol Burnett, who grew up here in San Antonio, and also Colonel Oliver North, also born in that hospital. Well, this is a very pretty part of the river. This is known as South Bank. And there's some really nice restaurants in this stretch of the Riverwalk, as you can see. You may be surprised to know there are, in fact, over 100 restaurants around the San Antonio Riverwalk and the nearby streets. So no matter what sort of food you're looking for, there's every likelihood you'll find it either at the river's edge or close by. In front of the boat, the Hyatt Regency Hotel, it was built in 1981. When this hotel in front of us was constructed, the height of the building was kept to 16 stories. And that's because on the other side of this hotel, from where we are, sits the Alamo. and nobody wanted a shadow over the Alamo at sunset. So it was calculated that if this hotel on our left here was kept to 16 stories in height, when the sun sets in the west every afternoon, the Alamo on the other side of this hotel will never be in shade. And if you've ever heard of a singer by the name of Phil Collins, well, apart from giving us some great music over the years, Phil Collins has another passion in his life apart from music, and that happens to be the Alamo. He's even written a book about it. Over the years, Phil Collins has collected hundreds of artifacts from the Alamo worth many millions of dollars, and he has donated them to the Alamo for a museum that's opening up later this year. So we have a very high regard and respect of Phil Collins here in San Antonio. We're hoping he's going to be here for the opening of that museum. Well, the building on our right-hand side, the Casino Club building, built 1927. Up on top of the building here on the right, above us, there are apartments up there. One of the famous residents that lived in those apartments in years gone by, the author Alex Haley. He lived here in San Antonio for a number of years. He lived in this building right here, and he really enjoyed his time here. So much so, he encouraged his good friend, Maya Angelou, to come and live here as well, which she did. She fell in love with San Antonio and the Riverwalk, just like Alex Haley. Now this part of the river through here, always very busy, very popular, as you can see. This is called River Square. Lots of great restaurants here, either side, all sorts of fabulous dining experiences, and also a part of the river where oftentimes you get to hear mariachi bands, like up here on the right-hand side. Now, I mentioned the name Robert Hugman a few times on the journey. Over here on the right-hand side of the boat, there's a building with a curved balcony, and on the front of the balcony here on the right, it says Hugman Architect. This was Robert Hugman's architect office back in the 1940s when the Riverwalk was being constructed. And over near the staircase on the right, there is the bust of Robert Hugman with a little bit of a storyboard about how the San Antonio Riverwalk came to be, with Robert Hugman's involvement with its design. Now this restaurant we're coming up to here in front of the boat with the colourful umbrellas is Casa Rio. It holds the honour of being the first restaurant to ever open on the San Antonio Riverwalk. It opened its doors back in 1946. It was opened by Alfred Beyer. And to this day, the Beyer family still own and operate this restaurant. Well, back in the 1940s, you would come in here to Casa Rio, you would enjoy your meal, then you were invited to take a gondola ride up and down the river where we are right here. Well, that practice gave rise to San Antonio's nickname back in those days, which was America's Venice. Now at this point we're leaving the natural San Antonio River again, taking a left-hand turn, and we're swinging into a man-made channel. Well, this channel that we've turned into was completed in 1968. And that was a big year for the city of San Antonio. That was the year the World's Fair came to town. It was called Hemisphere, and it brought 6 million visitors to the city to be a part of all the fun of the World's Fair. So there was a need for a better transport system to get those 6 million people and all the local people here in San Antonio around the city. And to help them get closer to the World's Fair, it was located underneath the Tower of the Americas, which we'll see shortly. So consequently, this channel was completed at a cost of $13 million. And it extended the Riverwalk just a little further into this part of the city, and also allowed everybody to have that easier access to the World's Fair underneath the tower, which we'll see shortly. Now, the building on our left-hand side of the boat here, this is the Chamber of Commerce building. Their role is to attract and promote business in the city. There are 4 flags out the front of the building. The United States flag, of course, on the left. Next to that is the Texas flag. The flag at the other end is the Chamber of Commerce flag. Meanwhile, the other red, white and blue flag in the middle there, well, that's the San Antonio flag. It features the Alamo on that flag. Now, back in 1985, there were plans to build a new hotel downtown. But there was a major problem. There was already a hotel sitting on the site where they wanted to build a new one. The hotel that was already there was a very historic hotel It was called the Fairmont Hotel, and it had been sitting on that spot since 1906. And nobody wanted to see the Fairmont destroyed or demolished just to build another hotel because it had so much historic and heritage value. So they had a bit of a problem. So a team of engineers were called in for their advice, and they said, leave it to us. So in March of 1985, the engineers all got to work. They jacked up the 3-story, 1,600-ton Fairmont Hotel. They loaded the entire hotel onto the back of 36 giant dollies. Then they proceeded to tow that hotel through the streets of San Antonio for a distance of half a mile to another location. That half-mile journey towing the hotel through the city streets took 6 days to complete. They were travelling at less than 1 mile an hour with that hotel. But they eventually got the Fairmont to where they wanted it. They put it down. It's still there today. The hotel they built in its place in 1985 is that white building in front of the boat. That is the Marriott Hotel. And there's a great YouTube video that runs about 15 minutes showing them towing that hotel through the streets of San Antonio. And I mentioned that the World's Fair came to town. When it did, the symbol of the World's Fair was the Tower of the Americas. And over on the right-hand side of the boat where I'm pointing, up between the trees, the big, tall, circular Tower of the Americas. Now the tower stands 750 feet high. It has an observation deck right at the very top. There's also a revolving restaurant called the Chart House. Watch your camera, sir. Watch your camera.
Thank you.
A revolving restaurant called the Chart House. It turns around once every hour, offering panoramic views of the city. A great place to be when the lights come on in the afternoon. Now, if you're planning on going up to the top of the tower, you'll have a choice of 4 ways to get there. There are 3 elevators, and there's 1 set of stairs, which has 952 steps all the way to the top, which I think is the perfect way to work up an appetite if you plan on going up there for a meal. So around the San Antonio Riverwalk, we actually have 3 locations where you can begin a tour. And this is one of the other spots right here. This is called Shops at River Center. All of this was completed back in 1988 at a cost of $250 million. In front of the boat, this is San Antonio's 2nd largest shopping mall. It has over 1 million square feet of retail space inside. There are 140 places to shop till you drop, 37 places where you can enjoy food or drink, and there are 5 restaurants down here at Riverwalk level as well. Also in the shopping mall in front of us, you will find an IMAX cinema. There's another cinema complex with 10 screens. There's a comedy club in there, our Dallas Cowboy store, Legoland, and our brand new aquarium here in San Antonio, which is called Sea Life. It's located inside this shopping mall. And just to give you an idea of where we are at this point in relation to the rest of the city of San Antonio, here we are about 1 block away from the Alamo at this location. And we're also 1 block away from San Antonio's most haunted hotel. That hotel is called the Manga Hotel. Now it has a recorded and documented 32 spirits wandering throughout the hotel building. There are many people who swear they would never spend a second night in the Manga Hotel because of all the extra activity they encountered there on their first night. But in saying that, I know a whole bunch of people who can't wait to go back to the Manga and stay again for another encounter. So it really just depends on your feelings on that whole subject. A lot of wind in this part of the river. I apologise if we do get bumped around. So we've been going around the little island back here on the right-hand side, and we put this island back here to good use. Santa Claus comes and sits on that island at Christmas. All the kiddos line up across the little bridge we went under back there, and they come on out, have a chat with Santa, have the photo taken as well. Also, throughout any normal year, we have a number of river parades that go round the San Antonio Riverwalk for all sorts of different occasions. And you can hire that little island back there with your family and friends. Then you'll end up with a front row seat to watch the river parade go round underneath. Well, it's 12 months ago since San Antonio and a lot of other nearby areas got hit by a severe winter storm. And that storm dumped about 6 inches of snow right across the city. We had below freezing temperatures here for almost a week. In fact, for many days, the temperatures didn't even get above 9 degrees. And that wintry weather we had really made a mess of the vegetation along the banks of the river. Around the San Antonio Riverwalk, we have about 20,000 varieties of trees and shrubs, and that includes a whole bunch of fruit trees. Around the Riverwalk, we have lemon trees, orange trees, we have lime trees, there are avocado plants, there are fig trees, pomegranate trees, and banana plants, and they all give pretty good fruit throughout the year. Well, over here on our right-hand side, up on the bank, there's an 8-foot-high statue. And this statue here on the right is the statue of St. Anthony, or as we know him a little better, San Antonio, who gave his name to the city and the river. And that statue was a gift to the city at the end of the World's Fair, as I mentioned, that was held here back in 1968. And it was a gift from the country Portugal. You see, San Antonio is the patron saint of Portugal. San Antonio is also the patron saint of lost things. And every so often they empty parts of the San Antonio Riverwalk in order to clean it out and to get things off the bottom of the river that shouldn't be there. And they did that about 3 weeks ago. When they do, they oftentimes find some extraordinary things lurking on the bottom. Things like tables and chairs from restaurants. They find plates and silverware, salt and pepper shakers, lots of handbags, purses, wallets, sets of car keys, sunglasses, credit cards, money, electric scooters. The number one item they find every time when they drain the river, that would be very expensive cell phones, folks. So please look after your phone around the river. Well, up here where I'm pointing on the right-hand side, up on the hill there, a beautiful church with a spectacular-looking steeple. Now, that church up there is St. Joseph's Catholic Church. It was built in 1868. Back in the mid-1800s, one of the largest populations that lived here in San Antonio at that time was German. And that church up there on the hill, St. Joseph's, was built for German worship here in the city. And in keeping with that tradition to this day, once a month, they hold a German service in that church. And that includes an all-male German choir called the San Antonio Liederkranz, who sing at that service in the church there every month. Before we go underneath the Alamo Street Bridge here, have a look over here where I'm pointing up above. Just past the building, you'll see a big orange ribbon-like structure overhead, and that is called the Torch of Friendship. Now, that sculpture up there was designed and created by the Mexican artist Sebastian. When Sebastian was interviewed about his artwork, he said he came up with that design thinking of the friendship between the United States and Mexico. The Torch of Friendship stands 65 feet high. It weighs 45 tons. And it was a gift to the city of San Antonio back in 2002. Well, there's only room for one boat at a time under this beautiful little bridge, so we're just going to take it nice and slowly. It's a bit of a blind corner over here on the right. And here we'll be getting back onto the natural San Antonio River. And folks, this is going to bring us to the end of our time together. I hope you've enjoyed your journey around the river. I hope you've enjoyed those 36 stories. Hopefully, something new in there you didn't know about San Antonio. And I want to go back to that story I told you a little while ago about that little iron bridge that they dismantled and they moved around the corner. Well, it actually sat here at Market Street for about 30 years. Until it was decided that a bigger bridge was needed for more road traffic here. So the little iron bridge was dismantled, as I mentioned, moved around to Presser Street where we saw it, and this bigger bridge was built here at Market Street in its place in 1926. Well, folks, we're going to come in and dock up here on the right-hand side. I'm going to ask you to remain seated, please. There is a lot of wind in this part of the river, as you know, so I don't want to see anybody fall over. I will let you know when it's safe to stand up. Also, before you leave, please do me a favour, just check around, make sure you take all of your personal belongings with you. If you discover later that you've left something behind, I don't want you to panic. You'll be able to get it back tomorrow very easily by going online to ebay.com. You'll find it there at a very attractive starting price. And if you enjoyed the tour and you think I did a good job as a captain, tips are allowed. They are more than welcome and very much appreciated. I'm going to leave my little Australian tip jar back here, and I thank you so much for joining me on the river today. I didn't get lost. That's a miracle in itself, and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Folks, please remain seated. Sorry if we bump around or get moved around a little bit with all the wind. Just let me tie up the boat and I'll let you know when it's safe to stand up. Thanks everybody. Have a great day. Great to be with you. Thanks so much.